Welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be going through my TBRs for the year of 2023 and seeing how many of the books that I actually got to. If you've been a subscriber to my channel for a while, you know that this year was pretty rough for me. I was very busy. I got married earlier this year. We went on a honeymoon. And just in general, I haven't been as steady on the uploads. I took a whole month off this year and I didn't do TBRs for every single month. I've also noticed that I've sort of stopped reading my TBR books, and I'm curious, I don't remember exactly when that started. So what I'm gonna be doing in this video, I'm not a fancy YouTuber, so I will not be putting my videos on the screen for you to watch. I'm so sorry. But I will be watching them, and I will be letting you know what I put on my TBR and whether or not I read it. So I think this could be fun. Let's start with January. Okay, so the first book that I pulled in January was to read Gathering Blue by Lois Lowry, which I have read. I believe I read it as part of a vlog. I don't remember what vlog it was, maybe the Whodunit Readathon. I am not sure on that though, so I will link that for you somewhere so you can watch it if you're interested. The next book that I pulled was to read Club Dead by Charlene Harris, which again, I did read. I think this is the third book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, which I mentioned in my 2024 TBR, which is my last video, that I want to continue in the series even more. Okay, here it is. So the next book that I put on my TBR is A Girl Like That by Tanez Bethina, I think is how that author's name is pronounced. And this I am like halfway through, but I have not continued since January, I think. This is about two teenagers in Saudi Arabia, and one of them is from India originally. And Saudi Arabia has really strict rules on girls not being able to drive, and then also girls and boys not being able to be alone together. But I believe the two teenagers were a couple in this book, and they die in a car accident before the start of the book. So you're seeing them watch their families like deal with the grief. Frankly, this book was a little heavy for me at the time, and also I just like wasn't super into it. So my plan is potentially to try to read this before the end of the year. And if I don't, I'm just gonna DNF it because at this point it's getting kind of ridiculous. Okay, and then the next prompt or the next book that I drew was An Arrow to the Moon. And I don't remember if I ended up reading this in January, but I have read An Arrow to the Moon. It's a YA fantasy romance type thing. It's mostly like magical realism, I guess. It's based on Chinese mythology, and it's like the story of the sun and the moon, I think. I thought this book was just fine. I really liked Emily X. Arpan's other book, which was also magical realism, but I didn't really love this one as much. But I have read it, so that's good. So that's what, 3-1 now? All right, I put Dante Alighieri, His Life and Works, which I see right over there. I DNF this book. So I'm gonna count it towards read because I did try to read it, and I'm not going to read it now. But that book was very boring. Okay, I also put The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware, and I did read that. Oh, Still Lives by Maria Hummel. I read that as well because the buzzwords were life and death. So I put Still Lives on there. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Okay, so not bad for January. There's only one book on there that I started and never finished. I think that's pretty good. Let's look at February. So in February, first book I put on my TBR was a nonfiction book called A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. I did read that, so we're looking good so far. Second book was To Let the Pets Pick, and so I let Murphy pick a book for me, and he picked Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl, and I did read that as well. Next book on this TBR is another nonfiction, I Am Malala, by Malala Yousafzai, and I did read this as well, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. And the last sorry pick is A Wizard of Earthsea. And I know I did not read that in February, but I have since read it. So I'm counting it as a win. I don't know when I ended up actually reading that. Was it Forced Gobblethon? It might have been, but I have read that now. So far, February's looking pretty good. I'm pretty proud of myself. I also participated in a readathon in February called the X's and O's Readathon, and I remember doing this, so that's good. One of the books on there is the group read, which is X's and O's by Amy Lee, and I believe I did read this, but I have no memory of reading it. I forgot that it was this year. I don't know what it was about. I think it was a romance, and I want to say it's like an influencer romance, but I don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I really can't remember. I also put Take a Hint, Denny Brown on this TBR, and I did read that. I also put Heartstopper Volume 4 on this, which I did not read. So that's another one on the, I did not even attempt to read it. Am I planning on reading it still? Yeah, but I have not read that yet. And I also put The Switch by Beth O'Leary, which I did read. I read that and a couple other things that I believe I did for a whole vlog for this readathon. I didn't read the group book in the vlog, but I did read 3 romances, so I will link it. I think Take a Hint, Danny Brown was one of the romances I read too, but I could be wrong. And then Me Before You, I put on this TBR, and I did read that. So we're looking pretty good so far. I think there's only 2 books that I just have not read. I did not do a March TBR, so let's look at what I plan to read in April. Okay, so in April, I did the Magical Readathon. So my TBRs for all the prompts of those. I'm not going to tell you what prompts I'm reading everything for, but I am just going to tell you the books that I picked and whether or not I read them. So first up, we have City of Brass by S.H. Chakraborty, and I did read that. So we're looking good so far in April. We have The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and I did read that. So again, April is looking good. I want to say I finished everything on my TBR for Magical Readathon, but I don't know if that's true. And again, I vlogged all of this, so I will link my vlogs for you in the comments down below or in the description box. All right. And then I also read Love in the Time of Cholera, or I put that on my TBR, and I did read that. So we're doing good again so far. So far, so good. Pretty Little Wife by Darby Kane. I did read that. So that was on my TBR, and I did eventually read it. Now we're hitting some options that I had for April, and I have not read any of them. So one of them is Cutting for Stone, which is behind me somewhere. I'm not going to get it out. I did not read that, but I said that was an option for one of the prompts. The other one is Unsheltered by Barbara Kingsolver, which again is back here somewhere, but I did not read that. Also, Madame Bovary. I did not read that. I don't know what I read for this. I probably got an audiobook Holden, honestly, but I did not read any of those books, so I spoke too soon about doing really well in my April TBR. And then I picked Over the Woodward Wall by A. Deborah Baker, which is a pen name for Shauna McGuire, and I did read this. So doing good again. That is everything I put on my TBR for April. So 3 books that I did not read and 6 books that I did read. That's not bad. Okay, we're gonna look at May, and I believe in May I participated in the May the Force Read With You readathon. I don't know how successful I was. I feel like I was not. So this might be where it really goes downhill. May is the month I got married. It's also the month I went on my honeymoon. So I know I was not reading as much as I probably could have read. So I put Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez on this TBR, and I know I read that, but I don't remember which month I read that in. But I did listen to it as an audiobook, and I listened to it in one day while I did a puzzle. And I love that book. It was great. It's probably going to be on my top 10 of the year. I really, really enjoyed that one. I put The Swimmers on this TBR, and I have read that. I believe I read that in May, but I could be wrong. Again, don't quote me on that. That is a really short book, but I did read it. So we're doing good so far. All right, I put One Italian Summer on this TBR, and I did read that. I also really loved that book. It kind of surprised me. It's not going to go on my favorites of the year, but I did give it 5 stars. So shocking. Grapes of Wrath is on this TBR. Oh God. I think this is the first month that it's on. It's going to be on a couple TBRs because it took me a couple months to read, but I did eventually finish that. So yay me. All right. And then I put the Midnight Library on this TBR, and I did reread that. So that was my favorite book in 2020, I think, or 2021. I really can't remember, but I have reread it since I read it originally. I reread it this past year. Lincoln Highway is on this TBR, and I did read that. So another point in my favor. Lessons in Chemistry is on this TBR. And I have read that, but I did not read that in May. I think I read that in like September. So I did get there eventually, but it took me a while. The Candy House by Jennifer Egan is on this TBR, and I did read that. Notes on an Execution is on this TBR, and I did read that in the airport and on the airplane. Ooh, When I'm Gone, Look for Me in the East by Quan Berry is on this TBR, and I did try to read this, but I did DNF it. I don't remember what I read in its place to fulfill the prompt for the readathon, but I assume I read something. The last thing on this TBR is Arsenic and Adobo. I believe that's for the buzzword, maybe? I did read that, so yay. Did you hear that? Oh no! So June is when I put The Stranger by Albert Camus on my TBR, and I have not read that yet. I put it on my 2024 TBR, in fact, because I have not read it yet. Still sitting up there in my shelf of shame. So far, June is not going well. And that's perfect because June is right now. So obviously I'm going to be reading The Wine of Beauty, but another book on this June TBR that did not get read in June, I'll tell you that much, The Line of Beauty by Alan Hollinghurst. I think I finished this in October or November. I read it recently, but it took me months to read. It took me months to pick up, and then like once I picked it up, I think it took me like 2 months to read. So I did enjoy it, but yeah, and I have read it, so it counts, but I did not read it in the month I said I was going to read it. That is embarrassing. And then I have Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I did read that. And then I picked Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang, and I did read that. I can't remember if June's buzzword was other. If it was, then I read that in June because I read that in whatever month the buzzword was other. So yay me. I have South to America by Imani Perry on this TBR, which I finished, spoiler for my December wrap up, this month. I just finished it. I again put Grapes of Wrath on this TBR, so I did eventually read it, but this marks 2 TBRs that it went on. Put The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton on this TBR, and I did read that. The Swimmers is on my June TBR, so I read it in June. But I did, again, eventually read that. 8 books that I was planning on reading that month. and I think I finished maybe 3 of them, so go me. Let's look at July, shall we? In July, I put The Line of Beauty back on my TBR. I did read it eventually, but I did not read it in July. Station 11, I think I did read that in July, actually, or August. Now I can't remember, but I have read that, so good. I read that as well. Then I put My Sister the Serial Killer on here, and I did read that, so yay. And then I put Cloud Cuckoo Land on my TBR, which again, I loved, and I did read that. So good, we're looking good so far. I think I've read every book that's on this TBR. I don't think there's any stragglers. I also put the School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan on this TBR, and I did read that. I also vlogged my experience reading that, so I will link that for you somewhere. I put LA Weather on this TBR, and I did read that, so yay. Okay, that's that. And I'm not talking about the video ideas that I mentioned in these TBRs that I don't actually do. One was a popular mystery thrillers vlog that I just didn't put up, and another, my personal favorite, I talked about the books that I read because they have television adaptations that I also watched that I just didn't do. So, you know, it is what it is. And I know for a fact I did not do the Aurelium readathon in August, so I'm very curious to see what books I put on this TBR that I just did not read. Okay, here we go. I put A Wizard of Earthsea on this TBR. I did not read it in August, but I did read it, so yay me. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison is on here, and I did read that. And then I put You Think It, I'll Say It by Curtis Settenfield on this TBR, and I did read that. I put Scythe on this TBR, and I did read that, although I don't know that I read it in August. I think I read it in September, but I read it, so that's all that really matters. I have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez on this TBR, and I did read that eventually, but again, I don't think I read it in August, but I did read it. Moby Dick is on this TBR, and I did read that. I suffered through such a long audiobook where so much of it is like unnecessary. Also, it was a really old audiobook because I got it for free. It was like a free download. It was recorded for CDs. So there are like 30 seconds to a minute every like couple of like 45 minutes. And if I listen on 2 times speed every like 20 minutes, where it was saying, please switch to the next disc. And then it would say like, this is a LibroVox recording of Moby Dick by Herman Melville, read to you. And that was like every so often. It was so annoying. So that was a very annoying experience for me, but I did read it. So yay, I read Moby Dick. I said I wanted to read Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. No, I did not read that. I did not even attempt to read that. I did not put it on hold. I did not get that from the library. Like, I did not read that book at all. This TBR is crazy ambitious. I'm like shocked. So, Burn by Patrick Ness I put on this TBR, and The Girl Who Drank the Moon I put on this TBR, neither of which I read. Apparently they both have dragons in them, so maybe I'll read them at some point. But no, I did not read those. Okay. What the hell? I put Universal Harvester by John Darnell on this TBR. I did not read that. I put Washington Black on this TBR, and I did not read that. I put The Invention of Wings by Sue Monk Kidd on this TBR, and I did not read that. I put The Rose and the Dagger by Renee Audier on this list. I did not read that. I put Release by Lucy Christopher on this TBR, and I did not read that. And then I put The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty, which, as you'll recall, we read City of Brass. Empire of Gold, I think, is the last book. Whatever. We read City of Brass back in May. But I did not pick up the sequel to that book at all. No, I don't think I looked at it. I don't think I looked for it. I just did not. I did not do that. Okay. And then I put The Cartographers by Ping Shepherd on this TBR, and I did read that. I loved that book. I love Ping Shepherd. I think this is only their second book, but I loved the Book of M when it came out, and I love this book now. So here we are. Okay. I think that's it for my August TBR. I did not read most of these books. I've not been keeping track, but there are a lot of books on here that I just did not get to. All right, let's see what else. I think the next time I made a TBR was not until November, because that makes sense. In September, I just mood read, and then in October, I did Spookathon. So I have vlogs of those, but I just roll as I went, so I kind of just mood read for that too. And then in November, I picked a TBR, and I think I did pretty well. Let's see. Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. I have read that. I did not finish it in November, but I have finished it since then. So, yay. I picked Beneath the Keep, and I did read that, and I hated it. So you can see my full review in my wrap-up, but did not like that book at all. Okay, then I also picked Everything I Learned in a Chinese Restaurant. I bought this book. It's on my bedside table. Haven't started it, haven't looked at it, haven't read it. Did not read it. Will I read it? I don't know. For my sci-fi prompt, I picked Gleanings by Neal Shusterman, and I did read that. And for my middle grade prompt, I picked Percy Jackson, The Last Olympian, the 5th book in the Percy Jackson series, and I did read that, so yay. Okay, for Buzzwordathon I picked For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing because the buzzword was good, I think, and I did read that, so yay. Come here, you wanna come here? I don't know if they can see you, but are you being a big baby? I know, honey, I know, we're almost done. All right, Murphy's just gonna sit here. I also picked 9 Lies About Work, which I did read. A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson, which again, I did read. I put Dead Wake by Eric Larson on this TBR, and I did read that. And I read Hollywood's Eve by Lily Anulik. Anulik? I don't know how her name is pronounced, but I did read that. So we're doing good. In November, I only didn't read one of the books, which is not terrible. I'll leave you in suspense for December to see if I finished all of my December TBR. It's like December 12th right now, so it wouldn't matter if I hadn't finished any of it, frankly. So, yeah, that's it. Those are the books that I was supposed to read this year. Have you read everything that you plan on reading this year? That's one thing that I want to get better at, but also, like, it's kind of funny to look back and see all the books that I thought I was going to read. I had such high hopes for myself, such ambitious plans that I did not accomplish. So I would like to revisit this video idea next year with my 24 and 2024, because I think that'll be really interesting to see how many of those books I actually read. Several of those books I picked because I knew, well, actually just one, I guess. I thought I put The Shining on a TBR, but I don't think I did. I did actually not that bad at the beginning half of this year. What really tanked me was the Aurelium readathon in August. I did not read for that readathon. I don't know what I was thinking putting that many books on my TBR, but so many of them I was like, nope, don't have time, don't care, I'm not doing it. So that's it. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about in here that I did not read and what you thought about them. And also let me know if you think I should prioritize them going forward. If you made it this far, leave a book stack emoji in the comments down below to let me know that you did that. And thank you so much for sticking through this whole video. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe to my channel if you have not already and you would like to, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!